Hi guys, hope you're having a wonderful day and welcome to my tutorial. And today's tutorial we are going to be looking at support and resistance. Now I have been promising to make this tutorial over the past weeks and I finally got around to doing it, and I hope this does help you in the new trading week to come. So in this tutorial I'm going to explain to you why support and resistance happens, how to spot support and resistance, and we're going to have a look at a live chart and we're going to try and plot support and resistance lines there, and then we'll try and also do an analysis on that chart, and then we can also discuss how you can plan your entry points and your exit points using support and resistance. So this is going to be quite a long video, so please do bear with me. I'm sure there's going to be a lot that you guys are going to learn from this. So just hang in there, and hopefully by the end we can all become better traders in the new coming week. Okay, so without keeping you guys waiting, let's go into it. Okay guys, so as we can see we have just a rough sketch of a graph, and I'll use this to illustrate support and resistance, how we pick it out. So the number one thing we look for is patterns or a repetitive nature. So as you can see here, we have a high over here, we have a high here, and we have a high here. And what you can see is it keeps repeating and bouncing at the same, around about the same level, right? So we can conclude that now we have what you call a resistance line between these three dots here. So if we look here, we can then expect a rebound where we can probably see the graph going down, and then it will probably come back up and test it again. And then we can also pick out support line at these spots right here. So we can see that it has come at this level, it has turned, it has come again, and it has turned once more. So we can then also expect a support line here. So picking these two out, we can then expect that should we turn here, the chances are great that we're gonna rebound here again. So remember the point that the market is basically a herd mentality. So there's a lot of people who are also analyzing the support and resistance, knowing that at this point they're gonna sell, which would be your exit point, and they will plan to buy back in at this point here, which will be your entry. So support and resistance has another golden rule that most people don't know. And that golden rule is, if a support or resistance line is broken, it will become the opposite. So let's look at this point over here. Let's say, for example, it didn't turn at this point and it rather went up like this and broke the resistance line. Chances are it's going to come back and it's going to test the same line as a support. So it broke through the resistance, and the resistance then became a support line, and we see a rebound. So the rule is, once one of these lines are broken, chances are it will become the opposite. So same thing happens here. If we see a break through the support line, chances are you will see the support line become a resistance. And I've actually illustrated here on this graph as well, where we notice there's a dip here, and we then can assume that we have a support. What we then notice is the support line is broken, and we test the same support line as a resistance, and then we break through, and then obviously we can then make our assumptions after that. Okay, so at this point, let's say this is where the graph is currently, and you as the analyzer now have to make a decision. Will we break or will it continue? Okay, so we're going to look at this practical example. we're looking at Naspers on a 1-day chart. And we're going to try and plot our support and resistance lines through these graphs. And then we'll see how we can plan our next movements ahead. This happened from March the 18th, which was when last year. So from March the 18th, 2019 to 18 November. So this will just be an example. So one thing we can notice is that we have a high here, which is we will then consider our resistance, and we have another high here, which is our resistance. And we know this because it's been tested. We went through this, it hit the low, and it tested again. So we can confidently set our resistance right here. Okay, so we've got this line here, and now we look at our support lines. We see that there's been a curve from there. It tests here and it tests here. How many times do we see it reaching this price range? It's 1, 2, and 3. So we can confidently say we have a support line right here. So we'll just add that. So we'll just add that right there. So using previous patterns, we've managed to plot our support and resistance lines. But then we also notice there's more movement in between these two. And then we can also plot our support and resistance in there. So let's have a closer look. So we can notice at this range here, we've got a test there, a test there, and a test there, and a test there. So this we can confidently see that this is another support line. And then if we look at the upper limits, we have a test here and a test here and another test here. So we can then just plot another line there as well as a resistance. So after plotting these lines, we now have a deeper look. The golden rule is that if a line is broken, it will become the opposite. Right. So if we look at this support line here that was clearly holding back the share price, we had a break at this point here. Right. And as we can see, when it breaks here, we go back up and we test this as a resistance. So at this point, it was a support, which was broken, and it became a resistance, which was then broken again. And then we had a rally and it came back and we tested it as a support once more. So that golden rule we can then confidently say does stand. Okay. So let's have a look at what we can expect in the future for this. So our bottom support line was tested. We had a good rally, went all the way up. As you can see, it's been testing these other lines that we've plotted before seeing them. Right? Came through, tested this line once more, broke through. It broke through this support line, but you can see there was a bit of a struggle where it broke through and went back, broke through again and retraced, and then it finally broke through and came back, and you can see it was testing here once more, and then it broke through. So we are confident about these lines. So let's see what we can expect in the future. So this is where we stand right now. As of today. So let's plot our new support and resistance line based on this. So clearly we can see this is standing out as our resistance. So we'll draw that there. And then we can clearly see there's a lot of spikes here at the same level, at the same price range. We can also compare that to this red candlestick here, where this is clearly a struggle point, and we can then assume that this is a support line. So we'll plot a line there. Okay, so now we have to use assumptions to try and plot what could happen based on these two lines. The pattern shows us that it's hit there, it's come down, rebounded, it's hit there, and it's come down. So it's safe to assume that we can expect this exact same pattern again, right? So let me just change this to a red crayon. So we can then assume that we will probably see something like this, where the support will hold, right? And this is a negative outlook. So if markets open in the negative, we know that we have a confident support line there where we can then buy in. So that is your entry point right here. If you want to be safe, you can plot another support line, because we do see that there was a test here and there was a test there. So you know that if this one doesn't hold, and a second partial buy-in is around this point. So we can then also plot lines there, saying, okay, if this one doesn't hold, perhaps the bottom one will. So this is assuming a negative outlook. We know which is the buy-in point, where we can expect a curve. Pretty easy. Okay. What if we open at a positive though? So let me just change this to a green. If we open at a positive, same thing. We have a resistance line there. It's safe to assume that we will see something like this. Chances are we'll find another test and then probably a negative outlook from there. So you know that if you are going to buy at open, your closing point will be at this point here. Remember the herd mentality. So everyone is looking at the same resistance as the maximum and a possible place to cash out. Same thing if we go to a negative. Everyone is seeing this as the best way or the best point to jump in if they feel that they've missed the train or there's a big opportunity to buy in this particular stock. But then we can also plot what if it doesn't turn here, because remember, it is possible to break a support or a resistance line. So you should account for that as well. So you know that, okay, if this doesn't hold, then we will see something go above this specific resistance. And we know that when it does come back down, the golden rule applies, where a resistance will become support once broken, or a support will become resistance while broken. So this is a very critical principle that applies as well. Okay, so we know now how to exit a position by seeing the lifespan of a certain movement using support and resistance. But how do we exit? This is a tricky question because everyone has different appetites for how much loss they're willing to take. And it also depends on the type of stock you're in. When you're trading CFDs, which is contracts for difference, which is completely different from stocks, but basically has the same principles, they have something they call a stop loss, which is basically them putting a bar on how much losses they're willing to take before pulling out of a certain position. Long-term investors don't have to worry about this because their outlook is only probably 3 years plus from now, so they won't really be invested in short-term fluctuations. But for a day trader, it also depends on the type of stock. If you're invested in something that you know will go a long way, something like an Apple stock or a Microsoft stock, you would rather keep hold of that until you finally do see your profits. But if you're in something extremely risky, something like Ascendus or Sassel, for example, which is a very tricky one, you have to set an acceptable loss limit. So I drew this here as an example, where we can see that there's a small hump here, which is basically a support line. So you can say, okay, listen, I'm willing to buy at 279 in hopes that I'll cash out at 327, right? and then you see that there's this other support line at the bottom. You can have your acceptable loss limit set to such a standard that should your graph, let's say for example, go down here, chances are it's still going to rebound here. But if it doesn't, and let's say it goes beyond this line, you can then implement your exit strategy, which is either pulling out partially. You can even decide to buy in partially, expecting maybe somewhere you will see the curve later on. But like I said, the exit is per person, per portfolio, depending on what stock they have. You will implement different exit strategies, or you can just extend the term of the investment. I will use EOH, for example, which is what I was invested in, and I decided to pull out. What I did was I reached my acceptable loss limit, and I pulled out 50%, and the graph then went down and it recovered a bit, and I decided, you know what, now it's time for me to pull out some more because I don't have a very good outlook on that specific stock for the short term, and I'd rather put that money somewhere safer. So that's basically how you plot your exit as well. Same as your entry points. If you are going to plot your entry points, it's always safe to plot your exit points as well, so that you reduce your losses. So yes guys, so that's a practical example. I hope it did help. You can just drop me a comment if you do have any more questions, or you can follow me on Twitter and I will be sure to answer those questions for you. Thanks again guys for watching, and I hope you have a good week. All the best. Trade safe. Peace. Hey guys, if you haven't already, you can sign up for Easy Properties. The link is in the description. You can also follow me on Twitter, and you can watch the previous videos I've made on these links attached. Thanks again for watching guys. Peace.